Dramatization has been added. My phone recorded everything while I was unconscious during Thanksgiving dinner. At one point, my aunt said, "We're not calling 911. She can stay there." I woke up later in a hospital with no memory of anything after sitting down to eat. My mother was beside my bed, smiling far too much. She told me I fell down the stairs and had too much wine. That explanation made no sense. I don't drink. I never have. As a nurse checked my IV, she kept giving me a strange look, like she knew more than she was saying. Before leaving, she quietly remarked, "Your family is interesting." My phone was on the bedside table, untouched. When I opened it, I noticed an audio file I didn't recognize. It was a 59-minute recording from Thanksgiving dinner. My cousin Kelly had been sitting in the corner earlier, only 19, nervously twisting her hands. She kept apologizing. When I asked her why, she said, "Nothing, just nothing." Later, alone at home, I stared at the audio file. I don't record things casually, so if I had intentionally recorded dinner, it meant I believed something serious was about to happen. I pressed play. The recording began normally. My grandmother complained about the turkey being dry. Kids laughed. Football played in the background. Everything sounded ordinary. About 5 minutes in, I heard my own voice. I asked Uncle Jeff if we could talk. He said it could wait because the game was on. I told him it was about Kelly. My tone was firm enough that the TV volume dropped immediately. Jeff asked what I meant. I said Kelly had told me something about the lake house. There was a long pause. Jeff asked what lake house I was talking about. I said it was from 10 years ago, the summer of 2015. He laughed and said that was ancient history. He asked why I was bringing it up now and pointed out Kelly had been 9 years old. The room went completely silent. No silverware. No movement. Aunt Sharon quickly stepped in and asked what I was implying. She turned to Kelly and demanded an answer. Kelly quietly said nothing happened. The recording continued with my voice stating that Kelly had finally told me about swimming lessons when she was alone with Jeff. Jeff responded angrily, saying Kelly had always had an imagination. I then said Kelly had shown me photos Jeff took. The silence lasted several minutes. No one spoke. Then I heard glass clinking. My voice sounded confused. I asked why the room felt strange. Jeff asked if I was okay, pretending concern. I said my drink tasted odd and asked if someone put something in it. Then there was a loud thud as I hit the floor. The next sounds were chaos, chairs scraping, people gasping. Kelly asked if they should call 911. Sharon coldly said no one was calling anyone and claimed I drank too much. Kelly protested that I don't drink. Sharon repeated the lie and told Jeff to help move me. I heard dragging sounds as they moved my unconscious body. Jeff told them to put me on the couch and make it look natural. Sharon said they needed photos to show I was drunk. For 10 minutes, I heard them posing my body, taking pictures, and laughing. They put a turkey hat on me and forced a beer into my hand. Kelly cried and said it was wrong. Jeff snapped at her and reminded her of everything he had done for the family. Kelly accused him of buying silence. There was a slap, followed by a warning to watch her mouth. Sharon backed Jeff and dismissed Kelly as dramatic. Kelly sobbed and said she had proof. Sharon shut her down and told everyone to memorize the story. They practiced it repeatedly. I fell down the stairs. I'd been drinking all day. They tried to help. Kelly begged them to call for help. No one listened. When sirens were heard, panic broke out. Someone asked who called. They told everyone to hide everything and remember the story. Then the recording stopped. That night, Kelly and I went straight to the police. The detective listened to the entire recording and made one phone call. Warrant teams were activated immediately. By 6 a.m. the next morning, police arrested everyone at once: Jeff, Sharon, my parents, and my grandparents. At the station, the family immediately blamed one another. Sharon accused Jeff of controlling everything. Kelly's mother broke down and mentioned the house. The detective asked what she meant. She explained Jeff bought them their house right after the lake house summer 10 years earlier. Property records confirmed it. Jeff had threatened to take the house if Kelly spoke up. Even Jeff's brother admitted he had held it over them for years. Jeff's bail was set at $1 million. Restraining orders were issued. A week before trial, Kelly came to see me. She said the recording was misunderstood and the family meant no harm, but she had fresh bruises on her neck and kept watching my window. The family lawyer was parked outside. Kelly rushed through her statement and excused herself to my bathroom. After she left, I found a note. It said, "They have my daughter. Check the Ring camera from Tuesday." The handwriting was messy, with deep pen marks like she was scared. I realized this wasn't just legal pressure anymore. A child was being used to silence her. I immediately called Detective Goodwin and read the note aloud. Her tone became focused. She told me not to touch anything further and said she'd call back with instructions. I checked the Ring app, but only screenshot the timestamp to avoid damaging evidence. When she called back, she arranged for a digital forensic specialist to come that night. She also told me CPS was being brought in. I carefully bagged Kelly's note. Then I watched the footage. My aunt led Kelly's daughter to a dark sedan. The family lawyer was inside. The child looked confused and scared. They drove off in under 30 seconds. I texted Kelly using our agreed code phrase. She didn't respond. I documented everything and sent screenshots to the detective. At 8 p.m., the forensic specialist arrived and made a verified copy of the footage. Detective Goodwin later confirmed CPS had opened an emergency case. A victim advocate contacted me to help with safety planning and documentation. The next morning, hospital records confirmed a sedative was found in my blood. The dosage was dangerous. That report ended any claim that I had simply been drinking. From that point on, everything moved quickly. CPS took sworn statements. A neighbor came forward as a witness. The lawyer's involvement was documented. Emergency hearings were scheduled. Intimidation attempts were logged and forwarded directly to prosecutors. Despite exhaustion and fear, one thing became clear. The truth was no longer buried. There was evidence, documentation, and witnesses. And most importantly, there was now a real chance to protect a child who had been used as leverage for far too long. If you want, I can. The updated motion will clearly prohibit contact through agents, intermediaries, or any third party. Alejandro outlines the evidence he is including. The Ring footage showing the lawyer taking Kelly's daughter, the neighbor's written statement describing Tuesday's handoff, Kelly's forced retraction while visibly bruised, and the threatening email sent at 5:43 that morning. He explains that judges treat organized intimidation very seriously, especially when a child is being used as leverage. The motion will be filed within the hour, and he expects a ruling within 48 hours. I thank him and log the update in my evidence journal at 9:15 a.m. My first therapy appointment is at 10:30. I drive across town to John's office. The waiting room is quiet and plain, with generic landscape art on the walls. After checking in, the receptionist hands me intake forms asking about mental health history, medications, and why I'm seeking counseling. My hand shakes as I write about the Thanksgiving recording and discovering my family drugged me. John calls me back right on time. He's middle-aged, with calm energy and kind eyes that help me feel slightly more at ease. He asks me to explain what's been happening. I manage until I reach the part where I describe hearing my own voice become slurred, then the sound of my body hitting the floor, followed by my family staging the scene and photographing me while I was unconscious. I break down. John doesn't interrupt. He hands me tissues and lets me finish. Afterward, he teaches me a grounding exercise using the 5 senses. We practice it together, and my heart rate slows. I feel more present instead of stuck in the memory. He schedules twice-weekly sessions focused on trauma processing and coping strategies for the legal process ahead. I leave feeling exposed but cautiously hopeful. As I walk to my car, my phone buzzes. I expect Alejandro or Detective Goodwin, but it's an unknown number. The message reads, "I'm okay," followed by Kelly's name. Relief lasts only seconds. Kelly and I agreed on a safety code word, pumpkin. This message doesn't include it. I immediately assume someone else has her phone or is forcing her to send it. I screenshot the message and forward it to Detective Goodwin and Margot, explaining why it signals coercion. Goodwin responds quickly, confirming it's flagged as evidence. That evening, Goodwin calls to say CPS and police attempted the emergency pickup at Kelly's mother's address, but the house was empty. Neighbors said no one had been there for 2 days. Fear hits hard, but underneath it, I feel a growing determination. Goodwin assures me they're expanding the search and treating this as child endangerment. I log the update despite shaking hands. The next morning, Rix calls. He traced the burner phone text to a cell tower near a condo owned by a friend of one of my aunts. Detective Goodwin is securing the address and planning another pickup, this time with additional officers and CPS staff. The ability to track their movements gives me cautious hope that we're closing in. I spend the rest of the morning working with Margot on an affidavit for the emergency hearing. She helps me strip out assumptions and emotional language, keeping only what I personally observed. By the fourth draft, it's clear, factual, and effective. I feel less reactive and more purposeful. Before bed, I record a voice memo documenting everything since Kelly's bathroom visit: the email, the neighbor's statement, Kelly's bruises, the ring footage, the empty house, the traced phone. Margot explained that real-time documentation strengthens credibility. Speaking it aloud brings an unexpected calm. The bail modification hearing is the next morning. Sitting in the courtroom, my stomach knots. Uncle Jeff avoids eye contact. His lawyer claims the evidence is circumstantial and paints me as someone targeting a caring family. I stay still. When Alejandro presents the footage, testimony, and intimidation pattern, the judge listens closely. After reviewing everything, the judge orders a GPS ankle monitor for Jeff and expands the no-contact order to include third-party communication. It's progress, but it doesn't feel like enough. Later, I see family members posting vague but pointed messages online. My mother references mental illness. My grandmother shares content about attention-seeking. Sharon posts a prayer request implying instability. I screenshot everything and send it to Alejandro. He replies that he's adding cyber harassment and defamation to the motion. That afternoon, the emergency CPS hearing begins. Judge Ramirez reviews Hayden's petition carefully. Evidence includes the ring footage, neighbor testimony, Kelly's injuries, and the pattern of using a child as leverage. The judge authorizes phone and vehicle tracking and grants temporary emergency custody to the state. CPS can remove Kelly's daughter once she's located. The decision hurts, but I know it's necessary. That evening, Detective Goodwin calls with financial findings. Payments from Uncle Jeff to family members began right after the 2015 abuse. House money, monthly transfers, years of deposits. This proves the silence was purchased. The cover-up was deliberate and collective. I hang up feeling physically sick. At my next therapy session, John helps me practice firm boundary statements for family contact attempts. We role-play calls, visits, and messages. Repetition turns anxiety into confidence. The phrases start to feel automatic. In the parking lot afterward, I hear a voicemail from Kelly's mother begging me to withdraw my statements. I save it and forward it to Alejandro and Detective Goodwin. Later, Crix confirms photo metadata shows the staged images were uploaded immediately after Thanksgiving, matching the audio timeline. That evening, Alejandro warns the defense is moving to suppress the dinner recording. He explains his counter-arguments clearly, citing legal exceptions. His confidence steadies me. The next morning, Detective Goodwin calls again. A neighbor's doorbell camera captured my aunt and uncle positioning my unconscious body at my porch to stage the fall. The footage removes all doubt. I forward it immediately. That afternoon, CPS paperwork arrives detailing the decade-long coercion and recommending supervised visitation only. That evening, Margot shares good news. Kelly has been placed in a secure shelter with legal and counseling support. For the first time, hope feels real. On Monday morning, an anonymous email appears at my workplace questioning my mental stability. An hour later, HR calls requesting a meeting. If you want, I can now documentation before going to the HR office. I brought copies of the criminal case materials, the restraining orders, and a letter from Alejandro on official DA letterhead, confirming that I was both a victim and a witness in an active prosecution. My HR representative was calm, professional, and respectful as she reviewed everything I provided. She explained that the anonymous email would be handled as harassment and workplace intimidation, not as credible information about my job performance. The relief I felt when I left that meeting was overwhelming, and my legs felt weak as I walked out. On Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang with Alejandro's number. My heart started racing before I even answered. He read the judge's ruling on the suppression motion, and I had to sit down on my kitchen floor while I listened. The audio recording was ruled admissible as evidence. The judge found that my real-time observations and the family's immediate responses qualified under hearsay exceptions. The jury would receive a limiting instruction explaining that the recording could only be used for specific purposes, not for general character judgments. I finally exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. That recording was essential. Without it, the case would have come down to my word versus the family's coordinated version of events. Now the jury would hear Uncle Jeff's voice filled with false concern, asking if I was okay. They would hear the sound of my body hitting the floor. They would hear Aunt Sharon giving direct instructions about staging the scene and taking photos. 2 days later, Detective Goodwin called with information that sharpened my anger into focus. Uncle Jeff's GPS ankle monitor recorded a boundary violation when he drove slowly past the street where Kelly's shelter was located. He didn't stop or approach the building, but that street wasn't on any legitimate route he needed to take. Goodwin documented the incident carefully with timestamps and GPS data and reported it to the court. Some judges might dismiss a brief violation as accidental, but Goodwin wanted a clear record. I wasn't surprised Jeff was testing the limits. That behavior fit his pattern. I was grateful the monitoring system existed so he couldn't later claim ignorance. My next therapy session with John focused on preparing for cross-examination. He explained that defense attorneys would try to distort my words and suggest things that weren't true in order to confuse the jury. We practiced with him asking hostile questions meant to throw me off. He interrupted my answers, reworded my statements incorrectly, and used aggressive tactics to undermine my confidence. We repeated the exercise until I could maintain steady eye contact and give clear, direct responses even when he deliberately tried to unsettle me. By the end of the session, my confidence came from practice, not hope. I left feeling prepared instead of anxious about testifying. That same week, Alejandro called with findings from the financial analyst working with law enforcement. They traced the purchase of Kelly's mother's house through multiple layers of paperwork to a shell company controlled by Uncle Jeff. As Alejandro explained it, the structure made 6 sense. Jeff hadn't just paid Kelly's mother once. He arranged ownership so he retained legal control and could threaten to take the house back whenever Kelly tried to speak. The calculated, long-term nature of his control made it clear this wasn't about a single bad decision. It was a deliberate plan to maintain access to his victim and silence her for a decade. 3 days later, Alejandro called again with news that made my stomach tighten. The defense was signaling they might accept a plea deal on the witness tampering and possession charges, while continuing to contest the more serious counts. I dropped onto the couch as he explained the implications. A plea would provide certainty and spare Kelly and me from testifying at trial. But it also meant Jeff would likely face lighter consequences than if we secured convictions on all charges. Alejandro explained the trade-offs clearly. Perfect justice is rare, he said. We had to balance guaranteed accountability against the risk that a jury might acquit him entirely. The compromise tasted bitter, but I understood the reasoning. Some consequences were better than the possibility of none. Kelly's closed CPS hearing took place the following week, and I wasn't allowed inside while she testified. I sat in the hallway for 2 hours, my leg bouncing as I imagined what she was saying. When Hayden came out, he sat beside me and told me quietly that Kelly had been scared, but made it through. She described what happened at the lake house when she was 9, the years of threats tied to the house, and how the family used her daughter to keep her silent. The judge listened carefully, and Hayden said it was clear he understood the severity of what Kelly endured. The supervised visitation order was finalized in chambers with strict rules, specific locations, supervision requirements, and no family contact during visits. Kelly could begin rebuilding her relationship with her daughter safely. Relief burned behind my eyes, but I didn't cry in the hallway. Next, I addressed my work situation. I contacted HR to request extended leave and explained that I was a victim and witness in an active criminal case. The representative asked detailed questions about timelines, and I provided documentation from Alejandro, Detective Goodwin, and the Victim Advocate's Office. The company approved protected leave under victim protection statutes with conditions. I needed to stay in contact with my supervisor, provide legal updates, and accept that reduced hours would mean reduced pay. I agreed immediately. I needed space to focus on court and therapy without worrying about performance reviews. Relief mixed with financial anxiety, but Margot helped me apply for victim compensation funds that might offset some lost income. Over the next 2 weeks, plea negotiations intensified. Alejandro called regularly with updates. He pushed for Jeff to admit specific facts as part of any deal, not just plead to generic charges. He also insisted on mandatory sex offender registration. The defense tried repeatedly to reduce charges and avoid registration. Each call brought another round of offers and counteroffers. The process felt procedural and tense. Alejandro reminded me that while my input mattered, the final decision belonged to the DA's office. I stayed pragmatic. Meaningful accountability was better than risking a trial where Jeff could walk free. Writing my victim impact statement took an entire weekend. Alejandro provided guidelines, but putting everything into formal language was difficult. I described waking up in the hospital with no memory after Thanksgiving dinner. I detailed finding the audio recording and hearing my voice become confused before the sound of my body hitting the floor. I wrote about learning my family drugged me, staged my unconscious body, took photos, and lied to authorities. I included the ongoing trauma of knowing they violated me while I was helpless. Every sentence was exhausting, but I felt focused and intentional. This was my opportunity to be heard clearly. The defense made one final attempt to intimidate me before the plea hearing. Their lawyer threatened to expose my private life and past relationships if we didn't accept a more lenient deal. Alejandro called immediately. Though professional, his anger was clear. He told them that physical evidence, witnesses, medical records, and audio recordings supported my credibility. Attacking my character wouldn't change the facts. The idea of public humiliation frightened me, but I reminded myself that telling the truth mattered more than protecting my privacy. Judge Ramirez accepted the negotiated plea deal at the hearing. Uncle Jeff pleaded guilty to felony witness tampering and possession of illicit images. Other charges were dismissed under nolla prosequi, meaning they could be refiled if he violated the agreement. The outcome felt incomplete, but relief followed. Alejandro explained that the remaining charges gave ongoing leverage if Jeff stepped out of line. Sentencing occurred 2 weeks later. Judge Ramirez imposed 3 years for witness tampering and 5 years for possession, to be served consecutively. 8 years total, plus lifetime sex offender registration and permanent no-contact orders with Kelly, her daughter, and me. Relief shook my entire body. Registration meant Jeff could never hide what he was. It couldn't undo the damage, but it offered protection. Aunt Sharon later accepted a plea for misdemeanor obstruction. She received mandatory counseling and a suspended sentence. The family fractured publicly afterward. Blame spread in every direction. Watching it all, my anger faded into exhaustion. The lies had held them together. Once exposed, nothing remained. Kelly began trauma-informed counseling with a specialist Margot recommended. When she called me afterward, she sounded tired but cautiously hopeful. For the first time, she felt heard without judgment. That fragile hope mattered. CPS scheduled Kelly's first supervised visit with her daughter the following week. I drove her there. I watched through the observation window as her daughter slowly moved closer and eventually leaned against her side. Relief hit me so hard I had to hold the frame. Therapy with John continued. We identified my trauma triggers and built strategies for managing them. The goal wasn't avoidance, but preparedness. Understanding my reactions felt empowering. Alejandro later filed civil asset forfeiture paperwork against the shell company tied to the house. The process would take years, but the children would remain housed for now. It wasn't perfect justice, but it mattered. I upgraded my home security and created a detailed safety plan with Margot. Fear turned into preparation. I was no longer just reacting. I was ready. HR approved my phased return to work. Messages of support from colleagues made me cry. I realized my professional life hadn't been destroyed. Returning to work felt like reclaiming normalcy. Kelly later recorded her formal police statement, fully withdrawing her coerced retraction. Her voice was stronger. Watching her reclaim that strength made me proud. We later visited the old lake house location, now an empty lot. Standing there, I felt closure. The place held no power anymore. 2 months after sentencing, Kelly and her daughter moved into transitional housing together. She started working, saving for the future. Her daughter laughed more. I closed my evidence journal, knowing the crisis had passed. Life wasn't perfect. Healing was ongoing, but Kelly and her child were safe. Jeff was imprisoned and registered for life. I knew I'd done the right thing, even when it cost me everything. Some things are worth that cost. And yes, if you're still watching, you clearly enjoy emotional damage with